Have you ever imagined how a testamentary secret can freeze an entire room? This happened and left everyone speechless. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Eleanor Winters sat on the edge of her bed, her trembling hands smoothing the dress meticulously chosen for the occasion. Today was her 75th birthday, a milestone that should be celebrated with joy and family. However, the deafening silence of the empty house was her only companion. Eleanor slowly stood up, her bones protesting with every movement. She walked to the dressing table, the mirror reflecting an image she barely recognized. Where was the strong woman who had raised 3 children alone after her husband's untimely death? Where was the matriarch who was once the pillar of her community? Her fingers brushed a framed photograph on the dressing table. In it, 3 smiling faces looked back at her. Olivia, the firstborn, now a renowned lawyer in New York. Nathan, the middle child, a successful businessman in London. And Sophia, the youngest, a rising socialite in Paris. Eleanor felt a pang in her heart. When was the last time she saw her children together? When was the last time she heard their laughter echoing through the corridors of this house? The phone rang, interrupting her melancholic thoughts. For a brief moment, Eleanor's heart filled with hope. Maybe it was Olivia calling to wish her happy birthday. Or Nathan, apologizing for not being able to be present. Or even Sophia, with her melodious voice promising a visit soon. But when Eleanor answered, she was greeted by the monotonous voice of a telemarketing attendant. Disappointment hit her like a punch in the stomach. She hung up the phone without saying a word, the tears she had held back for so long finally overflowing. It was at that moment, sitting alone in her living room, surrounded by memories of a life that seemed to have slipped through her fingers, that Eleanor Winters made a decision that would change the course of their lives forever. 3 days later, in an elegant office in the heart of Manhattan, Olivia Winters was immersed in a pile of legal documents. Her usually impeccable dark brown hair was tied in a disheveled bun, and deep dark circles marked her face. She had barely slept in the last 72 hours, preparing for what could be the most important case of her career. The phone on her desk rang, and she answered it distractedly, her eyes still fixed on the contract in front of her. "Olivia Winters," she answered, her voice sharp as a blade. "Miss Winters," the voice on the other end of the line was grave and formal. "This is Dr. Jameson from Maple Grove. I regret to inform you, but your mother, Eleanor Winters, passed away this morning." Olivia's world stopped. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, but she couldn't process them completely. Her mother? Dead? But how? When was the last time they talked? Olivia tried to remember, but realized with growing horror that she couldn't recall the last time she called home. "Miss Winters, are you still on the line?" Dr. Jameson's voice brought her back to reality. Yes, I'm here," she stammered, trying to regain her composure. How did it happen?" "Apparently, it was a heart attack during the night. She was found this morning by a neighbor who came to check on her." Olivia felt a wave of guilt engulf her. A neighbor. A stranger had cared more about her mother than she herself had. "I understand," she managed to say, her voice trembling slightly. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Thank you for letting me know, Doctor." As soon as she hung up the phone, Olivia found herself staring into the void. The walls of her office, once a symbol of her success, now seemed suffocating. She picked up her cell phone, her fingers hovering over the contacts. Nathan and Sophia. She needed to tell them. But how? How could she tell her siblings that their mother had died alone, forgotten by her own children? Miles away, in a luxurious apartment overlooking the Thames, Nathan Winters was about to close the biggest deal of his career. Dressed in a tailored Italian suit, he exuded confidence and power. His phone vibrated in his pocket, but he ignored it. Nothing could distract him now, not when he was so close to achieving everything he had ever dreamed of. "So, Mr. Winters," the man across the table smiled, a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Are we in agreement with the terms?" Nathan was about to respond when his phone vibrated again, this time more insistently. Irritated, he took it out of his pocket, ready to turn it off. But the name on the display made him pause. Olivia. His older sister rarely called, especially during business hours. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, standing up. "I need to take this call. It's a family emergency." As soon as he left the conference room, Nathan answered the phone. "Olivia, what happened?" His sister's voice, usually so controlled and professional, was choked with emotion. "Nathan, it's Mom. She's gone." Nathan's world seemed to slow down. Olivia's words echoed in his mind, but he couldn't comprehend them fully. "What do you mean, gone? Olivia, what are you talking about?" "Mom died, Nathan," Olivia said, her voice breaking. "This morning. A heart attack." Nathan felt his legs weaken. He leaned against the nearest wall, trying to process the news. His mother, the woman who raised him, who sacrificed everything to give him and his sisters a better life, was gone. And where was he? Miles away, about to close a deal that now seemed insignificant. I don't understand," he muttered. "How did this happen? Was she sick?" "We don't know," Olivia replied. "Apparently she was alone. A neighbor found her this morning." Guilt hit Nathan like a freight train. Alone. His mother had died alone, while he was on the other side of the ocean, chasing wealth and status. "Nathan?" Olivia's voice brought him back to reality. "We need to go home. Can you catch a flight today?" Yes, of course," he responded automatically. I'll sort things out here and catch the first available flight. Have you talked to Sophia?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Not yet. I was hoping maybe you could call her. You know how she can be." Nathan understood what his sister wasn't saying. Sophia, the youngest, had always been the most volatile of the three. Unpredictable and emotional, she probably wouldn't take the news well, especially coming from Olivia, with whom she always had a tense relationship. "I'll call her," Nathan agreed. "We'll meet at home then?" "Yes," Olivia replied, her voice now firmer, returning to the professional tone Nathan knew so well. "I'll take care of the initial arrangements. Just try to get here as soon as possible, okay?" After hanging up, Nathan stood in the hallway for a long moment, trying to catch his breath. How could he go back to that meeting room now? How could he care about mergers and acquisitions when his mother... With a deep sigh, he straightened his shoulders and returned to the conference room. The men around the table looked at him expectantly. "Gentlemen," Nathan began, his voice surprisingly steady, "I'm sorry, but I'll have to postpone our meeting. There's been a family emergency, and I need to return to the United States immediately." As the executives murmured their condolences, Nathan was already mentally making a list. Cancel appointments, reschedule flights, inform his team, and, of course, the most difficult task, calling Sophia. In a luxurious spa in Paris, Sophia Winters was lying on a massage table, her long blonde hair spread like a golden halo. Her eyes were closed, and a slight smile played on her lips as the masseuse's expert hands worked on her tense back. "Mademoiselle Winters?" A soft voice interrupted her relaxation. "There's a call for you. It seems to be urgent." Sophia opened her eyes, irritation clear on her face. She had given explicit instructions not to be disturbed during her spa session. Who would dare? "It's your brother, mademoiselle. He says it's a family emergency." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Nathan rarely called, and certainly wouldn't use the word emergency lightly. Something was wrong. With a resigned sigh, Sophia got up, wrapping herself in a silk robe. She picked up the phone with a growing sense of dread. "Nathan, what happened?" Her brother's voice, usually so confident and controlled, sounded strangely fragile. "Sophia, it's Mom. She passed away this morning." Sophia's world seemed to crumble. She sat down abruptly, her legs unable to support her. "What? No, this can't be. Nathan, what are you saying?" Nathan explained the situation in a few words, his voice choked with emotion. Sophia listened in silence, tears streaming down her face. When Nathan finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Sophia spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "When was the last time we talked to her, Nathan? When was the last time we visited? The guilt in her voice was palpable, reflecting Nathan's own feelings. I... I don't know, Sophia. It's been so long. I should have called, Sophia sobbed. I should have visited. I was so busy with what? Parties, fashion shows, and now she's gone, and I didn't even... Sophia, listen, Nathan interrupted, his voice now firmer. We can't change the past, but we can honor her memory now. Olivia is taking care of the arrangements. We need to go home. Sophia nodded, even knowing her brother couldn't see her. Yes, you're right. I'll catch the first available flight. After hanging up, Sophia sat for a long moment, staring into nothingness. The tears kept falling, staining the silk robe. How could she have been so selfish, so careless? Her mother, the woman who sacrificed everything for her, was gone, and Sophia couldn't even remember the last time she called to say, I love you. With trembling hands, she picked up her phone again. There were calls to make, flights to book. But first, she needed to cancel all her commitments for the next month. The parties, the fashion shows, the photo shoots, it all seemed so trivial now. As she made the necessary calls, Sophia found herself looking at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her, with smudged makeup and red eyes, seemed like a stranger. Who had she become? And more importantly, was it possible to go back? In the small town of Maple Grove, the news of Eleanor Winter's death spread quickly. Neighbors and friends gathered in front of the family home, leaving flowers and cards. For many, Eleanor was more than just another resident. She was the heart of the community, always ready to help, always with a gentle smile and a word of encouragement. Among the gathered residents was Sarah Thompson, the neighbor who had found Eleanor on that fateful morning. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she held a bouquet of daisies, Eleanor's favorites. I should have checked earlier, Sarah muttered to no one in particular. She seemed so sad lately, so lonely. Beside her, Reverend Michael Johnson, the local church pastor, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You did what you could, Sarah. Eleanor knew she was loved here. But what about her children? Asked another neighbor, his voice laden with disapproval. Where were they when she needed them? Reverend Johnson sighed deeply. It's not for us to judge, only to pray. Pray for Eleanor, and pray that her children find peace and forgiveness. As the Maple Grove community united in mourning, 3 planes converged on the small local airport, bringing back Eleanor Winter's prodigal children. Olivia was the first to arrive. Her usually impeccable suit was wrinkled after hours of flight, and her eyes were red and swollen. She walked through the airport terminal as if in a trance, dragging her small carry-on bag. Olivia! A familiar voice called out. She turned and saw Sarah Thompson waving at her. For a moment, Olivia didn't recognize the woman. Then, memories flooded her mind. Summer afternoons playing in the Thompsons' backyard. Mrs. Thompson bringing freshly baked pies while Eleanor and she chatted on the porch. Sarah, now with graying hair and lines marking her face, looked so different from the young mother Olivia remembered. Sarah, Olivia murmured, her voice hoarse. Before she could finish, Sarah enveloped her in a tight hug. Oh, dear, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry. Olivia allowed herself to be hugged, feeling the tears she had held back during the trip finally overflow. For a moment, she was no longer the successful New York lawyer, but the girl who grew up in Maple Grove, who had now lost her mother. Nathan arrived a few hours later, looking exhausted and disoriented. His eyes scanned the terminal until they found Olivia, who was sitting on a bench talking quietly with Sarah. Liv, he called, his voice breaking slightly. Olivia looked up, and for a moment, the siblings just stared at each other, years of distance and unspoken resentments hanging between them. Then, as if moved by an invisible force, they approached and hugged, Nathan burying his face in his older sister's shoulder. She's gone, Liv, he murmured, his voice choked. She's really gone. Olivia just nodded, unable to find words to comfort her brother when she herself felt so lost. Sophia was the last to arrive, her flight delayed due to a storm over the Atlantic. When she finally emerged in the terminal, she looked like a shadow of herself. Her face, usually perfectly made up, was pale and lifeless, and her eyes were swollen from crying. "Sophia," Nathan called softly, standing up to meet her. She looked at her siblings, and for a moment it seemed like she was going to crumble right there. But then she straightened her shoulders and walked towards them, her mask of composure firmly in place. "Hello, Nathan." "Olivia," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm sorry for the delay." Olivia observed her younger sister, noticing the small cracks in her facade, the tremor in her hands, the glimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. She wanted to say something, offer comfort, but the words seemed inadequate. "Let's go home," Nathan finally said, breaking the tense silence. We have a lot to do." The journey to the Winters family home was silent and laden with emotion. Each familiar turn of the road brought up memories that the siblings had long buried. The tree where they used to play as children, the park where Eleanor would take them for picnics on Sundays, the church where she insisted they attend every week. When they finally arrived at the house, all three hesitated before getting out of the car. The house, once so welcoming and full of life, now seemed strangely silent and oppressive. Sarah, who had driven ahead of them, was waiting on the porch. "Come in, dears," she said softly. "I made some tea." The Winters siblings followed Sarah inside, each step seeming more difficult than the last. The living room was exactly as Eleanor had left it, the book she was reading still open on the coffee table, her reading glasses carefully folded beside it. Olivia picked up the glasses, holding them as if they were the most precious thing in the world. Did she suffer?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. Sarah shook her head. "The doctor said it was quick, a heart attack in her sleep. She probably didn't even realize what was happening." Nathan let himself fall heavily onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. "We should have been here," he murmured. "We should have." "There's no use blaming yourself now," Sarah interrupted gently. "Eleanor knew you loved her." Sophia, who had remained silent until then, suddenly let out a bitter laugh. "Did she? Did she really know, Sarah? Because I'm not so sure." Olivia turned to face her sister. "Sophia, don't start—" "Don't start what, Olivia?" Sophia retorted, her voice rising. "Telling the truth? Pointing out the obvious? We abandoned her. All of us. We were too busy with our perfect lives to care about her." "That's not fair," Nathan protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Not fair," Sophia repeated, tears now flowing freely down her face. "You know what's not fair, Nathan? Our mother dying alone while her children were scattered around the world, too busy to even call on her birthday." The silence that followed was deafening. Each of the Winters siblings was lost in their own thoughts, confronting the harsh truth in Sophia's words. It was Sarah who finally broke the silence. "Eleanor left something for you," she said softly, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "She asked me to deliver this in case she asked me to deliver this in case something happened to her." Olivia took the envelope with trembling hands. On it, in her mother's elegant handwriting, was written, "To my children, to be opened after my departure." The siblings looked at each other, a mixture of fear and curiosity in their eyes. What could their mother have left for them? What final words would she have chosen? With a deep sigh, Olivia opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "My dear Olivia, Nathan, and Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I've left this world. I hope it was after a long and happy life, surrounded by you and your children. But if it wasn't so, if I departed before my time, before I could say everything I needed to say, then this is my last gift to you. First, I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you and will always love you, no matter where you are or what you've done. You are my greatest pride, my greatest joy. Second, I want to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness for any mistakes I may have made as a mother, for any moment when I made you feel less than the wonderful people you are. And third, I want to leave one last request. A challenge, if you prefer. Each of you will receive a task. Something I'd like you to do in my memory. It won't be easy. It will require sacrifice, courage, and above all, love. The kind of love I always tried to teach you. Olivia, my firstborn, always so strong and determined. Your task is to spend a month working at the local homeless shelter. Use your legal skills to help those who can't afford justice. Nathan, my middle child, always seeking success. Your task is to use your business talents to help revitalize Maple Grove's economy. Create opportunities for those who have been left behind. Sophia, my youngest, my free spirit. Your task is to organize an arts festival for the children of the town. Show them that there is beauty and possibility beyond the limits of our small town. I know what I'm asking isn't easy. I know you have lives, careers, commitments. But I also know you're capable of extraordinary things when you put your minds and hearts to it. This is my last wish, my last chance to teach you what really matters in life. Love, always, Mom. When Olivia finished reading, the room was in absolute silence. Eleanor's words hung in the air, heavy with expectation and emotion. Nathan was the first to speak, his voice hoarse with emotion. She planned this. She knew. Knew what? Sophia asked, wiping away the tears that had started falling again. Knew that we needed this, Olivia replied softly. This chance for redemption. The three siblings looked at each other, years of distance and misunderstandings seeming to melt away in the face of their mother's last wish. And now? Nathan asked, his voice laden with uncertainty. Olivia looked at the letter in her hands, then at her siblings. Now, she said with a determination that surprised even herself. Now we honor her memory. We do what she asked. Sophia nodded slowly. It won't be easy, she murmured. No, Nathan agreed. But she deserves it. She deserves us doing this for her. Sarah, who had remained silent during the reading of the letter, finally spoke. Eleanor always believed in you, she said softly. She always knew that one day you'd come home, not just physically, but in spirit. The Winters siblings turned to look at Sarah, seeing in her a reflection of the love and faith their mother had always had in them. Let's do this, Olivia said finally. Let's do this for her, for ourselves. And for Maple Grove. As the sun set over the small town, casting long shadows across the Winters' living room, three siblings who had spent years distant from each other, both physically and emotionally, found themselves united again. United by the love of a mother who, even in death, found a way to guide them back home. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activities. Between the funeral preparations and the need to deal with Eleanor's estate, the Winters siblings barely had time to fully process the magnitude of the task their mother had left for them. Olivia, always the pragmatist, was the first to address the subject directly. On the morning after the funeral, as the three were having coffee in the silent kitchen, she placed Eleanor's letter on the table. We need to talk about this, she said, her voice still hoarse after days of pent-up crying. Nathan looked at the envelope as if it were a bomb about to explode. Liv, do you really think this is the time? We just buried our mother. Sophia, who had been absently stirring her coffee cup, looked up. Actually, I think it's exactly the right time, she said softly. Mom wanted us to do this. It was her last wish. Nathan sighed deeply, running his hand through his disheveled hair. I know. It's just, how are we going to do this? We have our lives, our jobs. Which can wait, Olivia interrupted firmly. Nathan, think about it. When was the last time we did something truly meaningful? Something that wasn't just for ourselves? The silence that followed was deafening. Each of the siblings found themselves confronted with the uncomfortable truth in Olivia's words. Okay, Nathan finally said. Where do we start? Olivia picked up the letter, rereading the tasks Eleanor had assigned to each of them. Well, I need to get in touch with the local homeless shelter. Nathan, you could start researching the local economy, see where we can make the biggest difference. And Sophia, I already have some ideas for the arts festival, Sophia interrupted, a gleam in her eyes that her siblings hadn't seen in years. I've always wanted to do something like this, use my contacts in the fashion world for something more meaningful. Nathan looked at his sisters, a reluctant smile forming on his lips. You two seem almost excited about this. Olivia shrugged, but there was a slight blush on her cheeks. Maybe it's time we did something different. Something that really matters. Something that would make Mom proud, Sophia added softly. The three siblings exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. It wouldn't be easy, but they would do it. For Eleanor, for themselves, and for the community they had left behind so long ago. In the weeks that followed, Maple Grove witnessed a transformation. Olivia, who had always used her legal talents to defend large corporations, could now be seen at the small-town homeless shelter, helping residents navigate the complex legal system, fighting for their rights and dignity. At first, it was a shock to her. The contrast between her luxurious New York office and the simple, overcrowded shelter was stark. But as the days passed, Olivia found herself increasingly involved with the stories of the people she met there. There was Tom, a war veteran struggling with PTSD who needed help accessing his benefits. Sarah, a single mother who had fled an abusive relationship and needed legal assistance to maintain custody of her children. And young Michael, only 18, who had been kicked out of his home when he revealed his sexuality to his conservative parents. Each story touched Olivia in a way that no corporate case ever had. She found herself working late into the night, researching laws and precedents, determined to make a difference in these people's lives. One night, as she was closing the shelter after a long day of work, Olivia found herself thinking about her mother. "You were right, Mom," she murmured to herself. "This is what really matters." Meanwhile, Nathan was diving headfirst into the challenge of revitalizing Maple Grove's economy. Initially, Nathan approached the problem as he would any other business project, with spreadsheets, market analyses, and financial projections. But he soon realized that Maple Grove wasn't just another investment in his portfolio. It was a place with history, with real people whose lives would be directly affected by his decisions. He began spending his days talking to local small business owners, listening to their concerns and dreams. He met Mr. Johnson, owner of the town's only bookstore, who was struggling to compete with e-commerce giants. He talked with Mrs. Martinez, whose family bakery was on the verge of bankruptcy due to rising costs and declining clientele. Nathan found himself using his connections and knowledge in ways he had never considered before. He organized digital marketing workshops to help local merchants expand their online presence. He negotiated with banks to obtain better loan rates for small business owners. And, in a move that surprised even himself, he decided to invest part of his own fortune in creating a community development fund. One afternoon, as he was walking down Maple Grove's main street, Nathan noticed something different. The stores, which had previously looked tired and forgotten, now had a new shine. There were more people on the sidewalks, more cars parked. The town seemed to be coming back to life. "Mr. Winters," a voice called out. Nathan turned and saw Mr. Johnson waving from the door of his bookstore. "Would you like to see something?" Nathan entered the store, immediately noticing the new shelves and the newly added coffee section. "Wow, Mr. Johnson, the place looks great." The old bookseller smiled, his eyes shining. "All thanks to you, my boy. You know, when you showed up with all those crazy ideas about social media and online sales, I thought you'd lost your mind. But look at this." He gestured to a group of teenagers sitting on beanbags, reading and chatting animatedly. "I haven't seen so many young people here since you and your sisters were kids." Nathan felt a lump in his throat. "I'm glad to help, Mr. Johnson. My mother always loved this store." "Ah, Eleanor," Mr. Johnson sighed. "She would be proud to see what you're doing for the town, Nathan. Very proud indeed." Meanwhile, Sophia was facing her own challenges in organizing the arts festival for the town's children. Accustomed to the glamour and sophistication of the fashion world, she initially felt lost dealing with local art teachers and enthusiastic but inexperienced children. However, as she became more deeply involved in the project, Sophia rediscovered a passion she had forgotten long ago. She remembered how, as a child, she would spend hours drawing and painting, dreaming of one day seeing her creations in famous galleries. She began visiting local schools, talking to students about art and creativity. To her surprise, she discovered she had a natural talent for connecting with children, inspiring them to explore their imagination and express themselves through art. One day, while helping a group of children create a community mural, Sophia noticed a shy little girl standing at a distance, watching with anxious eyes. "Hey, sweetie," Sophia called gently. "Do you want to join us?" The girl shook her head, her eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't know how to draw," she murmured. Sophia knelt beside her. "You know something. I used to think the same thing when I was your age. But then I learned that there's no right or wrong way to make art. It's just about expressing what's inside you." The girl looked up, her eyes meeting Sophia's. "Really?" "Really," Sophia smiled, offering a brush. "How about we try together?" As she guided the girl's hand, helping her create her first brushstroke on the mural, Sophia felt something change inside her. It was as if a part of her that had been dormant for years was finally awakening. As the festival approached, the entire town seemed to vibrate with new energy. The streets were decorated with colorful banners, and everywhere you looked, you saw children and adults working together on art projects. One evening, as the three siblings were having dinner together in the old family house, something that had become a habit in recent weeks, Olivia looked around the table and smiled. "You realize what's happening, don't you?" she asked. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Us," Sophia replied, understanding. "We're changing. The town is changing. It's as if Mom knew exactly what we needed," Olivia completed. The three fell silent for a moment, each reflecting on the changes they had experienced in recent weeks. "You know," Nathan finally said, "I think I understand now why she asked for this. It wasn't just about helping the town or doing charity. It was about reconnecting with our roots, with who we really are." Sophia nodded, tears shining in her eyes. "I feel more alive than I have in years. More myself." "I know what you mean," Olivia agreed. "It's like we spent so much time chasing success that we forgot what really makes us happy." At that moment, sitting around the kitchen table where they had shared so many family meals over the years, the Winters siblings felt a connection they had long lost. It wasn't just the bond of blood that united them, but a shared purpose, a newly discovered understanding of the legacy their mother had left for them. As the weeks turned into months, the changes in Maple Grove and in the Winters siblings themselves became increasingly evident. The homeless shelter, once a precarious and forgotten structure on the outskirts of town, was now a vibrant center of hope and renewal. Thanks to Olivia's tireless efforts, it not only offered a roof for those in need, but also vocational training programs, legal assistance, and psychological support. On a particularly busy afternoon, Olivia was advising a young couple about their housing rights when she heard a commotion at the shelter's entrance. Curious, she excused herself from her clients and went to investigate. To her surprise, she saw a crowd gathered around a middle-aged man who looked vaguely familiar. When he turned, Olivia recognized him immediately. It was James Harper, one of the most prominent corporate lawyers in New York, and her former mentor. "James," she called out, incredulous, "what are you doing here?" The man smiled, a little embarrassed. "Hello, Olivia. Well, I heard about the work you're doing here. I thought I'd come see for myself." Olivia guided him to her small, improvised office, still trying to process her former boss's presence in Maple Grove. "So," James began, looking around with a mixture of curiosity and admiration, "this is quite different from the 50th floor in Manhattan, isn't it?" Olivia laughed softly. "Yes, it's a bit different. But James, you didn't answer my question. Why are you really here?" The older lawyer sighed, his normally confident posture giving way to something more vulnerable. "To be honest, Olivia, I'm here to make a proposal. The office isn't the same without you. We want you back. Name your price, your position, anything." For a moment, Olivia felt the old desire for success and prestige resurface. The idea of returning to New York, to the world she knew so well was tempting. But then, she looked out the window of her small office and saw the shelter's courtyard, where residents were working together on a community garden she had helped start. "James," she began, surprised by the firmness in her own voice. "I appreciate the offer, I really do. But my place is here now. The work I'm doing here, the lives I'm helping to change, this is more rewarding than any corporate case I've ever had." James observed her for a long moment, a slow smile forming on his face. "You know, Olivia, I always knew you were special. From the first day you walked into the office as a young associate, you had something the others didn't, a real passion for justice. I think over the years we all lost sight of that a bit. But you've rediscovered it." Olivia felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you, James. That means a lot to me." The older lawyer stood up, extending his hand. "No, Olivia, thank you for reminding me why we chose this profession in the first place." He paused, looking around once more. "You know, maybe it's time our firm started doing more pro bono work. Who knows? We might even establish a partnership with your shelter here." As Olivia watched James leave, she felt a wave of gratitude and fulfillment. Her mother was right. Sometimes you need to lose sight of who you are to truly find yourself again. On the other side of town, Nathan was facing his own challenges and triumphs. The community development fund he had established was beginning to bear fruit, with new businesses emerging and old ones revitalizing. One afternoon, as he walked down the now much busier Main Street, Nathan was approached by a group of young local entrepreneurs. "Mr. Winters," called a young woman, her face radiant with enthusiasm. "We wanted to thank you personally for your support. Without the initial funding from your fund, we would never have been able to open our coffee shop." Nathan smiled, genuinely touched. "It's a pleasure to be able to help. How are things going?" "Better than we could have imagined," replied another young man from the group. "Actually, we were thinking about expanding, opening a second location on the other side of town." "That's wonderful," Nathan exclaimed. "If you need any help or guidance, don't hesitate to reach out to me." As the group walked away, animatedly discussing their expansion plans, Nathan felt a sense of accomplishment that no multi-million-dollar business had ever given him. He was making a difference, not just in the numbers on a spreadsheet, but in people's real lives. That night, sitting in his old room in the family house, Nathan picked up his phone and made a call he had been postponing for weeks. "Hello, Marcus. It's Nathan Winters." "Nathan, what a surprise. We were just talking about you in the board meeting today. When are you coming back? We have some important business pending that really needs your attention." Nathan took a deep breath. "Actually, Marcus, that's what I'm calling about. I'm not coming back. At least, not full-time." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Nathan, you're joking, right? You're our CEO. You can't just—" "I can, Marcus," Nathan interrupted gently. "And I am. I've discovered something here in Maple Grove, something that makes me feel more alive and fulfilled than any business in London ever did. I'm not abandoning the company completely, but I want to reduce my role, maybe as a consultant or board member." But what about all your plans? The mergers, the acquisitions? Nathan looked out the window, seeing the lights of Maple Grove softly glowing in the night. "Sometimes, Marcus, we discover that our plans aren't really what we want. Sometimes, we find our true purpose in the most unexpected places." After hanging up, Nathan felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace with his choices. Meanwhile, Sophia was at the height of preparations for the Arts Festival. What had begun as a small event for the town's children had transformed into a celebration of creativity that was attracting artists and visitors from all over the region. On a sunny morning, Sophia was in the Central Park overseeing the setup of the art booths when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. "Sophia? Sophia Winters?" She turned and saw an elegant woman walking towards her. With a shock of recognition, Sophia realized it was Vivienne Leclerc, one of the most influential fashion editors in Paris. "Vivienne, what a surprise to see you here in Maple Grove. The editor smiled, her eyes scanning the park full of activity. I heard rumors about an innovative arts festival in a small American town, organized by none other than the famous Sophia Winters. I had to see for myself. Sophia felt a blush rise up her neck. Well, it's not exactly Paris Fashion Week, but no, it's much better, Vivian interrupted, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Sophia, this is extraordinary. The energy, the pure creativity, it's refreshing. You know, we were just discussing doing a special edition on community art and its impact on fashion. This would be perfect. Sophia's heart raced at the prospect. A part of her, the part that still yearned for the glamour and recognition of the fashion world, was thrilled at the idea. But another part, a part that was growing stronger every day, hesitated. Vivian, that's an incredible offer, but… Sophia paused, looking around at the enthusiastic children preparing their artwork, at the local volunteers working tirelessly, at the community that had embraced this project with so much love. This festival isn't about me or about fashion. It's about these children, about this community. I don't want it to become a media spectacle. Vivian observed Sophia for a long moment, an understanding smile forming on her lips. You've changed, Sophia. For the better, I must say. But I understand your concern. How about this? We do a discreet report, focused on the art and the community. No excessive glamorization. Just an authentic celebration of local creativity. Sophia considered the proposal, feeling a wave of gratitude for Vivian's understanding. That sounds perfect. Thank you, Vivian. As the editor walked away to explore more of the festival, Sophia felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had never experienced in all her years in the fashion world. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was supposed to do. In the days that followed, the Maple Grove Arts Festival was a resounding success. The town's streets were full of color, music, and laughter. Children proudly showed their creations to parents and visitors. Local artists, who had long abandoned their creative dreams, rediscovered their passion. And at the center of it all were the Winter siblings working side by side, more united than they had ever been. On the closing night of the festival, Olivia, Nathan, and Sophia gathered in the garden of their childhood home. The air was filled with the distant sound of music and laughter coming from the town. We did it, Olivia said softly, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. Nathan nodded, putting his arm around his sister's shoulders. Mom would be proud. She is, said Sophia, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I can feel her here with us. The three stood in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts and memories. So, Nathan finally broke the silence. What happens now? Do we go back to our lives? Olivia and Sophia exchanged glances. Actually, Olivia began, I've been thinking. The work we're doing here, it's important. More important than any corporate case or fashion show. I agree, said Sophia. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing something that really matters. Nathan smiled, a glint of determination in his eyes. Then we stay. We continue what we started here. But what about our careers, our lives elsewhere? Olivia asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. Our careers can wait, Nathan replied. Or rather, they can evolve. We can use our skills, our contacts, to make a difference here. Not just in Maple Grove, but in other communities too. Sophia nodded enthusiastically. We could turn this into something bigger. A model for community revitalization through arts, social entrepreneurship, legal assistance. The Winters legacy, Olivia said softly. That's how we can honor Mom's memory. The three siblings hugged, their tears mixing with laughter of joy and renewed hope. Conclusion. The sun rose over Maple Grove, bathing the town in a golden light full of promises. In the Winters house, three siblings woke up not just to a new day, but to a new life. A life of purpose, connection, and love. Eleanor Winters had left this world, but her legacy lived on. It lived in the smiles of children creating art in the park, in the hopeful eyes of shelter residents now with a brighter future, in the lights of new businesses dotting the main street. More importantly, her legacy lived in her children. Olivia, Nathan, and Sophia Winters had rediscovered not just their hometown, but themselves. They had learned that true success isn't measured in dollars or titles, but in the impact we make on others' lives. As they walked together through the town they had helped revitalize, the Winters siblings carried with them not just the memories of their mother, but the promise of a brighter future for themselves and for all those whose lives they would touch. Eleanor's legacy wasn't just about transforming a town. It was about transforming hearts, reconnecting souls, and reminding all of us that, in the end, it's the bonds we create and the good we do that truly define our lives. And so, in a small town called Maple Grove, three once-lost siblings found their way back home, to themselves, and to the true meaning of family. Eleanor Winters' legacy lived on and would continue to live on, touching lives and inspiring change for generations to come.